Hello, friends. I know I'm just an average guy telling creepy stories, but if you like them and get the scare you're craving for, please leave a like and subscribe. Enjoy the stories. I don't know how I ended up here, staring at my screen, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. The room is dim, lit only by the bluish glow of my monitor, and the silence is so heavy it feels like it's pressing down on me. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't have clicked that link. But curiosity is a cruel thing. It hooks you, drags you down paths you'd never walk in the daylight. And now, I'm in too deep, caught in something I don't fully understand, something that's already changed me in ways I can't undo. It started innocently enough. I was bored, scrolling through forums late at night, the kind of places where people trade stories about the internet's darker corners. I'd always been fascinated by the deep web, not because I wanted to do anything illegal, but because it felt like a forbidden world, a place where the rules of the surface didn't apply. I'd dabbled before, downloaded Tor, poked around a few marketplaces, bought some cheap electronics from sketchy vendors. It was thrilling, like sneaking into a haunted house as a kid. But this time, I went further than I meant to. I was on a thread about urban legends, the kind of stuff that's half joke, half warning. People were swapping stories about hidden sites, places you could only find if you knew exactly where to look. Most of it was nonsense, conspiracy theories, fake screenshots, links that led to dead ends. But one post caught my eye. It was buried deep in the comments, written by someone with a generic handle, no avatar, no signature. Just a string of text and a link. The message was simple. If you want to see something real, click this. But don't say I didn't warn you. The link was a mess of random characters. A bought onion address that looked like it had been spat out by a machine. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to close the tab, go to bed, forget about it. But my finger was already on the mouse, and before I could stop myself, I clicked. The page loaded slowly, the Tor browser crawling through layers of encryption. My screen flickered, and for a moment I thought it had crashed. Then it appeared, a blank black page with a single line of white text. Enter your invitation. No context, no explanation, just a blinking cursor in a text box. I stared at it, confused. Invitation? I didn't have anything like that. I tried typing random words, password, guest, access. Nothing worked. I went back to the forum, but the post was gone. Not deleted, just gone. Like it had never existed. I refreshed the page, checked my history, even dug through cached versions of the thread. Nothing. My stomach twisted. Had I imagined it? No, the tab was still open, the black page staring back at me. I spent hours trying to crack it. I don't know why I was so obsessed. Maybe it was the challenge, or maybe it was something else, something I couldn't name. I searched other forums, cross-referenced keywords, scoured every corner of the deep web I could access. Days passed, and I barely slept. My eyes burned from staring at the screen. My fingers ached from typing. I was chasing a ghost, and I knew it, but I couldn't stop. Then, on the third night, I found it. A different forum, a different user, but the same vibe. Another cryptic post with a string of numbers and letters buried in the comments. I copied it, pasted it into the text box on the black page, and hit enter. The screen went dark. Not blank, but dark, like the monitor had been submerged in ink. Then, slowly, a video feed flickered to life. It was grainy, low resolution, but I could make out a room. Concrete walls, no windows, a single rusted metal chair bolted to the floor. The lighting was harsh, industrial, casting sharp shadows. There was a table in the corner, covered with a stained cloth, and something glinted under the light. Tools, maybe, or instruments. My chest tightened. I knew what this looked like. I'd heard the stories, the ones whispered in those dark corners of the internet. Red rooms, places where people paid to watch unspeakable things. I told myself it was fake, a hoax, some elaborate prank. But my hands were shaking as I reached for the mouse. A figure appeared on the screen, moving into frame from the left. They were wearing a black hoodie, the kind you'd see anywhere, but their face was obscured by a cheap plastic mask, the kind kids wear on Halloween. The mask was featureless except for two black holes for eyes and a jagged slit for a mouth. They didn't speak, didn't acknowledge the camera. They just stood there, staring at the chair, their head tilted slightly, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, text appeared at the bottom of the screen, white letters on a black bar. Place your bid. I froze. Bid? For what? My mind raced, filling in the blanks with every horror story I'd ever read. I didn't want to know. Didn't want to see what came next. But I couldn't look away. The text changed. Guest access granted. Watch only. My heart stopped. Guest access? How did they know I was there? I hadn't signed up, hadn't entered any information beyond that code. I checked my VPN, my Tor settings. Everything was secure, or so I thought. But the words on the screen felt personal, like they were written just for me. The figure moved to the table, pulling back the cloth. Underneath were tools, knives, pliers, a hammer, a handheld blowtorch. My stomach churned. I wanted to close the tab, shut down my computer, throw it out the window. But my body wouldn't move. It was like I was locked in place, my eyes glued to the screen. The figure picked up a knife, turning it slowly in their hand, the blade catching the light. Then, from off-screen, there was a sound, a muffled groan, low and guttural. The camera panned slightly, and I saw them. A person, bound to the chair, their wrists and ankles strapped with leather restraints. Their face was hidden by a burlap sack, but I could see their chest heaving, their body trembling. The groan came again, louder, more desperate. The text on the screen changed again. Choose the first cut. Below it, a list appeared. Options like arm, leg, chest, each with a number next to it, like a menu at a restaurant. I realized what was happening. This wasn't just a video. This was interactive. Someone, somewhere, was paying to decide what happened to the person in that chair. My mouth went dry. I wasn't bidding, wasn't choosing, but I was still here, still watching. Did that make me complicit? I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't stop. The figure in the mask waited, knife in hand, as the numbers next to the options ticked upward. Arm was winning, the number climbing past 500, then 600. I didn't know what the numbers meant. Dollars, credits, something else entirely. But it didn't matter. The figure nodded, as if acknowledging an invisible audience, and stepped toward the person in the chair. They grabbed the bound arm, yanking it taut against the restraint. The blade hovered for a moment, then pressed down, slow and deliberate. The scream that followed wasn't muffled anymore. It was raw, piercing, the kind of sound that crawls into your bones and stays there. Blood welled up, dark and thick, running down the arm and pooling on the floor. The camera zoomed in, lingering on the wound, the torn skin, the exposed muscle twitching underneath. I gagged, my hand flying to my mouth. I wanted to look away, but my eyes wouldn't obey. The text updated. Next bid. The figure stepped back, wiping the knife on their sleeve, casual, like they were cleaning a paintbrush. The person in the chair was sobbing now, their bodies shaking so violently the restraints creaked. I could hear their breath hitching, ragged and uneven, through the burlap sack. The camera stayed on them, unblinking, as the list of options reappeared. This time, chest was climbing fastest. I don't know how long I watched. Minutes, maybe hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. The figure worked methodically, following the bids as they came in. Each cut, each scream, each new tool pulled from the table was worse than the last. The blowtorch was the worst. The smell, I couldn't smell it, not really, but my brain filled in the details, the acrid burn of flesh, the sizzling pop of skin. The person in the chair stopped screaming after a while. They just whimpered, their heads slumped forward, the burlap sack stained with sweat and blood. I was a guest. That's what the screen said. I wasn't bidding, wasn't choosing, but I was still there, still watching. And that's when I realized the truth. I wasn't just a guest. I was part of it. The moment I clicked that link, the moment I entered that code, I'd crossed a line. And whatever was on the other side of that screen, it knew I was here. It wanted me here. The feed cut out abruptly, the screen going black again. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then, new text appeared, bright and stark against the darkness. See you tomorrow, guest. My blood ran cold. Tomorrow? I hadn't signed up for anything, hadn't agreed to come back, but the words lingered, burning into my vision, and I knew, deep down, that this wasn't over. Not for me. Not yet. I unplugged my router, tore the battery out of my laptop, anything to break the connection. But it didn't matter. I could still see the chair, the knife, the blood. I could still hear the screams. And worst of all, I could still feel that pull, that sick, gnawing curiosity, whispering that I should go back, that I needed to see what happened next. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mask, the blade, the options ticking upward. And I knew, no matter how much I wanted to deny it, that I'd be back. Not because I wanted to, but because something in that room had latched onto me, and it wasn't letting go. The next morning, my apartment felt wrong. The air was too still, the light too harsh, like the world itself was holding its breath. I hadn't slept. Couldn't, not after what I'd seen. My laptop sat on the desk, closed, unplugged, its presence like a weight in the room. I told myself I was done, that I'd never go back to that site, that I'd delete Tor, wipe my hard drive, and forget it ever happened. But even as I made those promises, I could feel the pull, that sick curiosity clawing at the edges of my mind, whispering that I needed to know more. I tried to distract myself. I made coffee, burned my toast, stared at my phone, scrolling through meaningless feeds. But my eyes kept drifting to the laptop. I kept hearing the screams, seeing the blood pooling on the concrete floor, the glint of the knife in that masked figure's hand. I kept seeing the text. "See you tomorrow, guest." It wasn't just a suggestion. It felt like a command, like whoever or whatever was behind that site knew I'd be back. And the worst part? They were right. By noon, I was pacing, my hands shaking, my skin clammy. I told myself it was fear, exhaustion, maybe even guilt for watching something so vile, but deep down, I knew it was something else. It was need. Not want, not desire, but need, like an addict itching for a hit. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was fake, some elaborate deep fake or staged performance. Maybe it was just a sick game, designed to scare people like me who wandered too far into the dark web. But the screams had been too real, the blood too vivid, the way the figure moved too deliberate. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see, something that had seen me back. I lasted until evening. The sun was setting, painting my walls orange when I finally gave in. I plugged the router back in, reconnected the laptop battery, and opened Tor. My hands moved like they were on autopilot, my fingers typing the onion address from memory. I didn't even need to check my history. It was burned into my brain, every character, every digit. The black page loaded instantly this time. No delay, no flicker. Just the same white text. Enter your invitation. I typed the code from the night before, half expecting it to fail. It didn't. The screen went dark, and the video feed flickered to life. It was the same room. Concrete walls, rusted chair, stained table. But something was different. The chair was empty, the restraints hanging loose, smeared with dried blood. The tools on the table were still there, but they looked used, their edges crusted with dark stains. The figure in the mask stood in the corner, motionless, their head tilted like they were waiting for something, or someone. My stomach twisted as the text appeared. "Welcome back, guest." I felt a chill, like ice water running down my spine. How did they know it was me? I was on Tor, behind a VPN, my tracks covered. But the words felt personal, directed, like they could see me through the screen. The camera panned slowly, revealing more of the room. There was a door now, metal, rusted, with a heavy bolt locking it shut. I hadn't noticed it before, maybe because the camera had been focused so tightly on the chair. The figure walked toward it, their movements jerky, almost mechanical, and slid the bolt open. The door creaked as it swung inward, revealing darkness beyond. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath catching. I couldn't see anything in the shadows, but I could hear something, faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat or muffled breathing. The figure stepped back, and another person appeared, dragged into the frame by two others dressed in the same black hoodies and featureless masks. The new person was bound, their hands tied behind their back, a black hood over their head. They were struggling, their body twisting against the grip of the masked figures, but it was no use. They were forced into the chair, their wrists and ankles strapped down with practiced efficiency. The hood was ripped off, revealing a man, maybe in his 30s, his face pale and slick with sweat. His eyes were wide, darting around the room, pleading with the camera, with me. I felt sick. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him to fight, to run, but I was just a guest, a silent witness behind a screen. The text appeared again. Place your bid. The same list of options flashed up: arm, leg, chest, face. The numbers started climbing, faster this time, like the audience was hungrier, more eager. The man in the chair was shaking, his lips moving, mumbling something I couldn't hear. The figure in the mask picked up a pair of pliers from the table, turning them over in their hands, the metal glinting under the harsh light. The man's mumbling turned into a sob, then a scream as the figure stepped closer. I don't want to describe what happened next. I can't. But I will, because it's burned into me, and maybe writing it down will make it less real, less heavy. The pliers clamped down on the man's finger, slow at first, then with a sickening crunch. His scream was high-pitched, animalistic, the kind of sound you don't forget. Blood sprayed, not a lot, but enough to speckle the figure's mask. They didn't flinch, didn't react, just moved to the next finger, methodical, like they were checking items off a list. The text updated. Next bid. The options shifted, new ones appearing, nails, teeth, eyes. My stomach heaved, and I barely made it to the trash can before I vomited. I should have closed the laptop then. I should have smashed it, burned it, done anything to break the connection. But I didn't. I wiped my mouth, sat back down, and kept watching. I don't know why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was that pull again, that need to see how far it would go. The bids kept coming, the numbers climbing higher, the figure in the mask following each instruction with precision. The man in the chair stopped screaming after a while, his voice hoarse, his body slumped, blood pooling beneath him. The camera zoomed in, lingering on the damage, the torn flesh, the broken bones. It was clinical, almost detached, like a surgeon's video, but there was nothing healing about this. The feed cut out again, just like the night before, but this time there was no text. No, see you tomorrow. Just darkness, then a single image. A still frame of the man in the chair, his face twisted in agony, one eye swollen shut, the other staring directly into the camera. Directly at me. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I unplugged everything again, tore the cables out, but it didn't help. I could still see his face, still hear his screams, still feel the weight of those words. Welcome back, guest. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on my couch, the lights on, a kitchen knife in my hand, jumping at every sound. I kept thinking about the man, about the room, about the figure in the mask. Who were they? Who was bidding? And why was I still a guest? I hadn't paid, hadn't chosen, hadn't done anything but watch. But that was enough, wasn't it? Watching was participating. Watching was agreeing to the rules of that place, whatever they were. The next day, I tried to stay offline. I left my apartment, walked aimlessly through the city, hoping the noise and crowds would drown out the images in my head. But they didn't. Every face I passed looked like his. Every shadow felt like it was hiding that masked figure. I bought a coffee, sat in a crowded shop, and stared at my phone, trying to act normal. But my hands were shaking, and I couldn't stop checking the time, counting down the hours until evening, until the pull would drag me back to my laptop. I knew I was going to open it again. I hated myself for it, but I knew. The red room had its hooks in me, and it wasn't letting go. I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was part of it, whether I wanted to be or not. And as the sun set, casting long shadows across my apartment, I felt that need rising again, stronger than ever. I plugged the router back in, opened the laptop, and typed the address. The black page loaded, and the text appeared, same as always. Enter your invitation. I typed the code, my fingers steady now, resigned. The feed flickered on, and the room was there, waiting. The chair was empty again, but the stains were fresh, the tools still wet. The figure in the mask stood in the center, their head tilted like they were looking right at me. And then the text appeared. Different this time, colder. "You're late, guest. Don't make us wait again." My blood ran cold. They knew. They knew I'd hesitated, knew I'd tried to stay away, and they weren't happy about it. The words, "You're late, guest. Don't make us wait," again lingered on the screen, stark white against the black void. My hands froze above the keyboard, my breath shallow, as if any movement might draw more attention from whatever was behind that feed. The room on the screen was the same. Concrete. Cold. The chair bolted to the floor, the table with its grim array of tools. But it felt different now. Heavier. Like the air itself was watching me. The figure in the mask stood motionless, their heads still tilted, the black holes of their eyes seeming to bore through the screen, through my monitor, into my apartment. I wanted to slam the laptop shut again, to run, to burn every trace of this nightmare, but my body wouldn't move. It was like the room had reached through the screen and pinned me in place. The text vanished, replaced by the familiar "place your bid" prompt. But this time it felt different. The options were gone. No menu of body parts, no climbing numbers. Instead, there was a single line. Guest privilege activated. Choose. My stomach dropped. Choose? I hadn't bid, hadn't paid, hadn't done anything but watch. But the word choose pulsed on the screen, demanding, expectant. Below it, a blank text box appeared, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I stared at it, my mind racing. What did they want? What was I supposed to type? The figure in the mask moved, stepping toward the table, their gloved hand hovering over the tools. The camera zoomed in, lingering on the array. Knives, pliers, a saw, a syringe filled with something dark and viscous. My chest tightened. I hadn't signed up for this. I was just a guest, a bystander. But the text didn't change, and the figure didn't move, their hand still poised, waiting for my input. I typed nothing into the box, my fingers trembling, and hit enter, hoping it would end the session, break the connection, anything. The screen flickered, and new text appeared. Invalid choice. Try again. The figure's head snapped toward the camera, the movement sharp, unnatural. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I typed stop, hit enter. The text changed again. Invalid. Choose a tool. The figure's hand moved, brushing over the saw, the teeth catching the light. I felt bile rise in my throat. I typed none, desperate, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hit the keys. The screen went black for a split second. Then the feed returned, and the figure was closer to the camera, so close I could see the cracks in their plastic mask, the faint sheen of sweat on the exposed skin of their neck. Choose. The text repeated, now in red, the letters jagged, like they'd been scratched into the screen. I was crying now, tears blurring my vision, but I couldn't look away. The figure stepped back, and the camera panned to the chair. It wasn't empty anymore. A woman was there, strapped down, her arms and legs bound so tightly the leather restraints cut into her skin. Her face was uncovered, no hood, no sack, just her eyes, wide and glassy with terror, darting between the figure and the camera. She was young, maybe my age, her hair matted with sweat, her mouth gagged with a strip of cloth. She was trying to scream, the sound muffled, her body jerking against the restraints. I don't know why I did it. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was the pressure of that word, choose, burning into my brain. I typed knife into the box and hit enter before I could think. The text vanished, and the figure nodded, slow and deliberate, like they'd been waiting for me to break. They picked up a small curved blade from the table, its edge gleaming, and stepped toward the woman. Her muffled screams grew louder, her body thrashing, but the restraints held firm. The figure grabbed her arm, pinning it to the armrest, and dragged the blade across her forearm, slow and shallow. Blood welled up, bright and thick, running in rivulets down her skin. Her scream broke through the gag, a sound so raw it felt like it was tearing through me, too. I vomited again, right there on my desk, the acid burning my throat. I was sobbing, shaking, my hands clawing at my face, but I couldn't stop watching. The figure stepped back, wiping the blade on their sleeve, and the text reappeared. Good choice, guest. Again. The woman was still screaming, her arm bleeding, her eyes locked on the camera, pleading, accusing. I typed stop again, over and over, slamming the keys, but the text kept rejecting it. invalid, choose a tool. The figure picked up the pliers this time, not waiting for my input, and moved toward her hand. I closed my eyes, but I could still hear it, the crunch, the scream, the wet snap of bone. When I opened them, her finger was bent at an impossible angle, blood dripping onto the floor. I don't know how long it went on. The bid started again, the audience taking over, their choices flashing across the screen. Teeth, nails, skin. The figure followed each one, methodical, unhurried, while the woman's screams faded into whimpers, then silence. Her head slumped forward, her body limp, blood pooling beneath the chair. I thought she was dead, prayed she was, but then her chest heaved, a shallow, ragged breath. She was still alive. The camera zoomed in on her face, her eyes half open, unfocused, but still staring at me. The text returned. Guest session complete. Await further instructions. The feed cut out, leaving my screen black. I sat there trembling, my hands sticky with sweat, my desk a mess of vomit and tears. I felt hollow, like something had been carved out of me. I hadn't wanted this. I hadn't meant to choose, but I had. And now the woman's blood was on my hands, even if I hadn't held the knife. I unplugged the laptop again, my movements frantic, and shoved it under my bed, as if hiding it could erase what I'd done. But it didn't. I could still see her face, still hear her screams, still feel the weight of that word, choose. I didn't leave my apartment the next day. I couldn't. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the fridge made me jump, convinced the figure in the mask was outside my door. I kept my phone off, my curtains drawn, my lights dim. I tried to eat, but everything tasted like ash. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that room, the cursor blinking, demanding I choose. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that it was some sick performance, but the details were too vivid. The way the blood glistened, the way her skin tore, the way her eyes begged for mercy. I couldn't convince myself it was fake. Not anymore. That night, I heard a ping from under the bed. My laptop was off, unplugged, its battery removed, but the sound was unmistakable. A notification, sharp and clear. I froze, my heart pounding, my breath catching in my throat. I told myself I'd imagined it, that it was just my mind breaking under the strain. But it came again, louder, insistent. I crawled to the bed, my hands shaking as I pulled the laptop out. The screen was dark, dead, but when I pressed the power button, it flickered to life instantly, without the battery, without being plugged in. The Tor browser was already open, the black page loaded, the text waiting. Guest status upgraded. Prepare for session 2. I screamed, throwing the laptop across the room. It hit the wall, the screen cracking, but the feed stayed on, the room flickering into view. The chair was empty again, the tools cleaned and neatly arranged. But the figure was there, standing in the center, their mask glinting under the light. They raised a hand pointing at the camera, at me, and the text changed. You're not just a guest anymore. I don't know how I survived that night. I smashed the laptop with a hammer, broke it into pieces, burned the fragments in a trash can in my kitchen. But the images didn't leave. They were in my head, in my dreams, in every shadow. And the worst part? I knew it wasn't over. They'd upgraded me, whatever that meant. They'd chosen me. And no matter how far I ran, no matter how much I destroyed, I could feel them watching, waiting for me to come back. The smell of burnt plastic lingered in my apartment, acrid and sharp, from the smoldering remains of my laptop in the trash can. I'd watched the pieces melt, the screen's cracked glass warping under the flames, hoping it would sever whatever connection I'd stumbled into. But it didn't. The air still felt wrong, heavy, like it was charged with something I couldn't see. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, the hammer still clutched in my hand, my knuckles white. My eyes burned from crying, from not sleeping, from staring into the dark, waiting for that ping to come again. It didn't, but the silence was worse. It felt like the calm before a storm, like the red room was biding its time, knowing I couldn't escape. I hadn't eaten in days, hadn't left the apartment, hadn't even opened the curtains. The world outside felt unreal, like a dream I couldn't reach. My phone was off, buried in a drawer, but I kept imagining it buzzing, lighting up with that same black page, that same text. "You're not just a guest anymore." I didn't know what it meant, but it terrified me. They'd upgraded me, pulled me deeper into their game, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer just watching. I was part of it, marked by that choice I'd made, the knife I'd typed into the box. Her blood was on me, her screams echoing in my skull, and no amount of fire or denial could wash that away. I tried to convince myself to leave, to run, to get as far from my apartment as possible. But where would I go? The Red Room wasn't just a website. It wasn't just code and servers hidden in the dark web. It felt alive, aware, like it had latched onto me the moment I clicked that link. I kept replaying every step, finding the forum, entering the code, watching the chair, choosing the knife. I'd been curious, reckless, but I hadn't asked for this. Or had I? The thought made my stomach churn. Maybe by watching, by staying, by typing that word, I'd invited it in. That night, I barricaded my door with a chair, as if that could keep it out. I sat in the dark, the hammer in my lap, listening to the hum of the city outside, trying to anchor myself to something normal. But then I heard it. A faint hum, not from outside, but from inside my apartment. It was low, electrical, like a device powering on. My heart stopped. I'd destroyed the laptop, burned it to ashes. My phone was off, unplugged. There was nothing left. But the hum grew louder, coming from the drawer where I'd hidden my phone. I told myself it was impossible, that I was losing it, but my feet were already moving, my hands pulling open the drawer. The phone's screen was lit, glowing faintly in the dark. The Tor browser opened to that black page. The text was there, waiting. "Session 2 begins now. Don't disappoint us." My hand shook as I picked it up, the device cold against my skin. I didn't turn it on. I couldn't have. But the feed was already loading, the familiar concrete room flickering into view. The chair was there, empty, the restraint still stained with blood. The table held new tools, a scalpel, a drill, a small metal rod glowing faintly red, like it had been heated. The figure in the mask stood in the corner, their head tilted, the plastic face gleaming under the light. They didn't move, didn't speak, but I could feel their attention, like a weight pressing down on me. The text changed. "Choose the guest." My breath caught. Choose the guest? The words didn't make sense, but they filled me with dread. The camera panned to the metal door, the one I'd seen before, rusted and bolted. It creaked open, and two masked figures dragged someone in, a man, older this time, his face uncovered, his eyes wide with panic. His mouth was gagged, but he was fighting, his legs kicking, his body twisting against the restraints as they forced him into the chair. The camera lingered on his face, his skin pale, his eyes pleading, just like the woman's had been. The text reappeared. "Choose the tool, or we choose the guest." I dropped the phone, my hands shaking so badly it clattered to the floor. The screen didn't crack, didn't turn off. The feed kept playing, the man's muffled screams filling the room, louder than they should have been from such a small speaker. I grabbed the phone, my fingers fumbling, and typed "stop" into the text box, slamming the keys. The text flashed red. "Invalid. Choose a tool." The figure in the mask stepped forward, picking up the scalpel, turning it slowly in their hand. The man's screams grew louder, more desperate as the figure approached. I typed "none," my vision blurring with tears, but the text rejected it again. "Choose, or we choose for you." The figure raised the scalpel, hovering it over the man's chest, the blade catching the light. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I typed "drill," my hands moving before my brain could catch up, some part of me hoping it would be less cruel, less final. The figure paused, then set the scalpel down and picked up the drill. The hum filled the room, low and menacing, as they pressed it against the man's shoulder. His scream was unlike anything I'd heard before, a sound so raw it felt like it was tearing me apart. Blood sprayed, mixed with flecks of bone as the drill bit into flesh, the camera zooming in, unblinking, capturing every detail. I threw the phone against the wall, screaming, but the feed didn't stop. It kept playing, the sound echoing from the floor, the man's cries mixing with the whine of the drill. I stomped on it, over and over, until the screen cracked and went dark, but I could still hear it, still see it in my mind. The blood, the bone, the figure's calm, mechanical movements. I collapsed, sobbing, my hands clawing at my hair, trying to rip the images out of my head. I'd chosen again. I'd done it again. And this time I couldn't pretend it was a mistake. I don't know how long I sat there, curled up on the floor, the hammer still in my lap. The apartment was quiet now, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like a cage, like the walls were closing in, like the red room was here with me. I kept thinking about the text. Choose the guest. What did it mean? Were they going to make me pick the next victim? Or was it worse? Was I the guest they'd choose if I refused? The thought made my skin crawl, my heart racing so fast I thought I'd pass out. I tried to leave the apartment, to run, but my legs wouldn't work. Every time I moved toward the door, I saw the masked figure standing outside, waiting, their plastic face gleaming in the dark. I was trapped, not just by the room, but by what I'd become. I'd watched, I'd chosen, and now I was theirs. The phone, shattered on the floor, pinged again, a single sharp sound that made me scream. I crawled to it, my hands shaking, and saw the screen flicker back to life, the text glowing through the cracks. Session 3 tomorrow. Be ready, guest. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the corner, the hammer in my hands, staring at the broken phone, waiting for it to light up again. I kept thinking about the man, the woman, the blood, the tools. I kept thinking about my choices, how they'd made me part of it, how they'd changed me. I wasn't just watching anymore, I was participating, complicit, and the Red Room knew it. It had my attention, my fear, my guilt, and it wasn't letting go. By morning, I was a wreck, my body aching, my mind frayed. I tried to destroy the phone again, smashing it with the hammer until it was nothing but plastic and glass. But it didn't matter. The Red Room wasn't in the phone, wasn't in the laptop. It was in me now, in my head, in my hands. And as the day dragged on, I felt it pulling me back, that sick need rising again, stronger than ever. I didn't want to choose, didn't want to watch, but I knew I would, because they'd upgraded me, because I wasn't just a guest anymore, because whatever the Red Room was, it owned me now. The day passed in a haze, each hour dragging me closer to the inevitable. My apartment was a prison, the walls stained with the memory of burnt plastic and the echo of screams. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, hadn't moved from the corner where I sat, clutching the hammer like it could protect me. The broken phone lay in pieces across the floor, its cracked screen dark, but I couldn't stop glancing at it, waiting for it to hum, to light up, to pull me back into that concrete room. I knew it was coming. The text had said, Session 3 tomorrow. Be ready, guest, and the weight of those words hung over me like a guillotine. I was trapped, not just by the Red Room, but by what it had made me. A participant, a monster, someone who typed drill and watched a man's shoulder turn to pulp. I tried to fight it. I told myself I wouldn't go back, wouldn't give in to that pull, that need that gnawed at my insides. I showered, hoping the hot water would wash away the guilt, the fear, the images burned into my mind. But the water felt like blood, warm and slick. And when I closed my eyes, I saw her arm, his shoulder, the glint of the scalpel, the whine of the drill. I scrubbed my hands until they were raw, but I could still feel the weight of the choices I'd made, the keys I'd pressed, the blood I'd spilled without touching a blade. By evening, I was shaking, my body weak from hunger and exhaustion, my mind splintering under the strain. I'd destroyed my laptop, my phone, every device that could connect me to the Red Room, but it didn't matter. The pull was stronger now, like a physical force, a hand gripping my spine and dragging me towards something I couldn't see. I paced the apartment, the hammer still in my hand, muttering to myself, trying to convince myself I could resist. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. I couldn't. The Red Room wasn't just a place. It was inside me, a parasite that fed on my fear, my curiosity, my shame. I don't know when it happened, but at some point, I noticed a faint hum. Not from the phone, not from anything I could see. It was coming from the walls, the floor, the air itself, low and steady, like a heartbeat. I froze, my breath catching, my eyes darting around the room. The hum grew louder, more insistent, and then I saw it. A faint glow from the closet, where I'd stuffed an old tablet I hadn't used in years. I hadn't touched it, hadn't even remembered it was there. But the hum was coming from it, undeniable, pulling me toward it like a magnet. I opened the closet door, my hands trembling, And there it was. The tablet's screen lit up. The Tor browser already open. The black page waiting. The text was there, stark and cold. Session 3 begins now. Choose wisely, guest. My stomach lurched, and I dropped the hammer, my knees buckling. I hadn't turned it on, hadn't connected it to anything. It was impossible, but the feed was loading, the concrete room flickering into view, the chair, the table, the tools. The figure in the mask stood in the center, their head tilted, the plastic face gleaming under the harsh light. The chair was empty, but the restraints were wet, the floor slick with fresh blood. The text changed. Choose the guest. My heart stopped. It was the same as before, but the words felt heavier now, more final. The camera panned to the metal door, creaking open, and two masked figures dragged someone in. It was a boy, young, maybe a teenager, his face uncovered, his eyes wide with terror. His mouth was gagged, his wrists bound, but he was fighting, his skinny frame thrashing against the figure's grip. They forced him into the chair, strapping him down with brutal efficiency, his muffled cries filling the room. The camera zoomed in on his face, his cheeks streaked with tears, his eyes pleading with the lens, with me. The text reappeared. Choose the tool, or we choose the guest. I was sobbing now, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the tablet. I didn't want to choose, didn't want to be part of this, but the figure was already moving toward the table, their gloved hand hovering over the tools, a hammer, a syringe, a thin metal rod still glowing faintly red. I typed, "Stop," my fingers slipping on the screen, but the text flashed red. Invalid. Choose a tool. The figure's head snapped toward the camera, the black holes of their mask locking onto me, like they could see my hesitation, my weakness. I typed none, my vision blurring with tears, but the text rejected it again. Choose, or we choose for you. The figure picked up the syringe, the dark liquid inside catching the light, and stepped toward the boy. His cries grew louder, more desperate, his body jerking against the restraints. I couldn't watch, couldn't let this happen again, but my hands were moving, typing hammer, before I could stop myself. I told myself it was better, less cruel, something that might knock him out, spare him the pain. But I knew I was lying to myself. The figure nodded, setting the syringe down and picking up the hammer. They turned it over in their hand, testing its weight, then stepped toward the boy. The camera zoomed in, lingering on his face, his eyes wide, his mouth straining against the gag. The figure raised the hammer, slow and deliberate, and brought it down on his knee. The sound was sickening. A wet crunch, bone splintering, flesh tearing. His scream was so loud it distorted the tablet's speakers, a raw animal sound that clawed at my insides. Blood sprayed, staining the chair, the floor, the figure's mask. They raised the hammer again, and I threw the tablet across the room, screaming, my hands clawing at my face. It didn't stop. The feed kept playing, the boy's screams echoing from the floor, the hammer coming down again and again, each blow punctuated by a sickening crack. I crawled to the tablet, my hands shaking, and tried to turn it off, but the screen wouldn't respond. The text flashed again. Good choice, guest. Again. The figure stepped back, the hammer dripping, the boy's leg a mangled mess of blood and bone. His screams had faded to whimpers, his body slumped, but his chest was still moving, still fighting to breathe. The bid started again, the audience taking over, their choices flashing across the screen, fingers, ribs, skull. The figure followed each one, methodical, unhurried, the camera capturing every detail. The way the boy's skin split, the way his bones protruded, the way his eyes rolled back in his head. I was screaming, begging, but no one could hear me. I was alone. Trapped in my apartment, trapped in the red room, trapped in my own choices. The feed cut out eventually, the screen going black, but the text lingered. Session 4, tomorrow. You're one of us now. I didn't move for hours. I sat there, curled up on the floor, the tablet's glow fading but never fully dark. The boy's face was burned into my mind, his screams echoing in my ears. I'd chosen the hammer. I'd done this. And now they were calling me one of them. Like I'd crossed some final line. Like I'd become part of the machine that ran that room. I wanted to die, to disappear, to erase myself from whatever this was, but I couldn't. The red room wouldn't let me. I tried to destroy the tablet, smashing it with the hammer until it was nothing but shards, but it felt futile. The hum was still there, in the walls, in my head, a constant reminder that they could reach me no matter what I did. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't move. I just sat, waiting for the next session, knowing it was coming, knowing I'd be there, knowing I'd choose again. Because that's what they wanted. That's what I'd become. Not just a guest, not just a watcher, but something worse, something that belonged to the red room. And as the night stretched on, the hum grew louder, and I felt it pulling me deeper, into a place I'd never come back from. The hum never stopped. It was in my head now, a low, relentless drone that pulsed with my heartbeat, tying me to the red room even as I sat in the wreckage of my apartment. The tablet was shattered, its pieces scattered across the floor like broken teeth, but I knew it didn't matter. The red room wasn't in the devices anymore. It was in me, a stain I couldn't scrub out. I hadn't slept in days, hadn't eaten, hadn't even looked at myself in the mirror. I was afraid of what I'd see. Her arm, his shoulder, the boy's mangled knee, all reflected in my eyes. Proof of what I'd done. The text from the last session burned in my mind. You're one of us now. I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was complicit, a cog in their machine, and the weight of it was crushing me. I had to get out. That thought, faint at first, grew louder, cutting through the fog of fear and guilt. I couldn't stay here, couldn't keep sitting in this apartment, waiting for the next session, for the next choice that would carve another piece of me away. I had to run, to break the connection, to find some way to escape the red room before it swallowed me whole. But where could I go? The hum was everywhere, in the walls, in the air, in my bones. And those words, choose or we choose for you, felt like a promise that they'd find me no matter how far I went. I forced myself to move. My body ached, my legs shaky from exhaustion, but I grabbed a backpack and stuffed it with whatever I could find. Clothes, a water bottle, a half-eaten granola bar from the counter. I didn't dare touch my phone or any other device, convinced they'd come alive the moment I did. The hammer was still in my hand, its weight a small comfort, something solid in a world that felt like it was unraveling. I pushed the chair away from the door, my hands trembling, and stepped into the hallway. The building was quiet. Too quiet. The fluorescent lights flickering like they were mocking me. Every shadow looked like the figure in the mask, every creak like the metal door in that concrete room. I took the stairs, avoiding the elevator, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the empty stairwell. My heart pounded with every step, expecting the hum to follow, expecting the walls to light up with that black page, that cursed text. But nothing happened. The street outside was dark, the city humming with its usual noise, cars, distant voices, the faint buzz of streetlights. It felt wrong, too normal, like the world hadn't noticed the horror I'd been dragged into. I pulled my hood up, kept my head down, and started walking. No destination in mind, just the need to move, to put distance between me and that apartment. I walked for hours, through streets I barely recognized, my mind racing. I kept replaying everything, the forum post, the link, the chair, the tools, the choices I'd made. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that it was all a trick, a psychological game designed to break people like me. But the screams were too vivid, the blood too real, the way the figure moved too deliberate. And that hum, it wasn't just in my apartment. I could still feel it, faint but persistent, like a thread tying me to the red room, no matter how far I went. I ended up in a part of the city I didn't know, a rundown area with boarded-up shops and flickering streetlights. My legs were burning, my lungs raw, but I couldn't stop. I found a 24-hour diner, its neon sign buzzing faintly, and slipped inside, hoping the light and noise would drown out the hum. The place was nearly empty, just a tired waitress and a trucker hunched over a coffee mug. I slid into a booth in the corner, my backpack clutched to my chest, the hammer tucked inside. The waitress brought me a menu, but I couldn't focus on it. My hands were shaking, my eyes darting to every shadow, every reflection in the window. I kept expecting to see the mask, the black eyes, the text flashing across the glass. I ordered coffee, my voice hoarse, barely audible. The waitress gave me a strange look, but didn't ask questions. I sat there, staring at the cup, the steam rising like a ghost. I needed a plan, some way to break free. I thought about going to the police, telling them everything, but what would I say? I'd found a website, watched people suffer, chosen tools to hurt them? They'd think I was crazy. Or worse, they'd think I was involved, complicit in something criminal. And what if the Red Room was watching? What if they knew I was thinking about betraying them? The thought made my skin crawl, the hum in my head growing louder, sharper. I tried to think logically. The Red Room was on the dark web, hidden behind layers of encryption, accessible only through Tor. If I could cut myself off completely, no internet, no devices, no trace, they might lose me. I could disappear, start over somewhere far away, somewhere they couldn't reach. But even as I thought it, I knew it was impossible. The Red Room wasn't just a site. It had found my laptop, my phone, my tablet, devices I hadn't even used. It had turned them on, bypassed every safeguard, every precaution. It wasn't just technology. It was something else, something that knew me, that saw me, that wanted me. The diner's TV was on, some late-night news channel droning in the background. I wasn't paying attention until I heard a familiar sound, a faint hum, barely audible, blending with the buzz of the fluorescent lights. My head snapped up, my heart racing. The TV screen flickered, the news anchor's face replaced by static, then darkness. I froze, my coffee cup trembling in my hands. The waitress didn't notice, the trucker didn't look up, but I knew what was coming. The black page appeared on the screen, the text glowing. "You can't run, guest. Session 4 begins now." I dropped the cup, coffee spilling across the table, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The waitress turned, frowning, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The concrete room flickered onto the TV, the chair, the table, the tools. The figure in the mask was there, standing in the center, their head tilted, the plastic face gleaming. The chair was empty, but the restraints were wet, the floor slick with blood. The text changed. "Choose the guest, or we choose for you." The camera panned to the metal door, creaking open, and two masked figures dragged someone in. I couldn't see their face, not yet, but their body was small, fragile, their hands bound, their struggles weak. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, my hands shaking as I grabbed my backpack. The waitress called after me, but I was already running, out the door, into the night, the hum following me, louder now, relentless. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care, just needed to move, to get away from that screen, that room, that choice. But as I ran, I felt it. The Red Room wasn't just behind me. It was everywhere, in every shadow, every flicker of light, every hum in the air. I'd tried to escape, but it had found me, just like it always would. I stopped in an alley, my chest heaving, my vision blurring with tears. The hum was deafening now, vibrating in my skull, and I knew I couldn't outrun it. I slumped against the wall, the backpack slipping from my shoulder, the hammer clattering to the ground. I was exhausted, broken, my mind fraying at the edges. I'd thought I could escape, but the Red Room wasn't a place. It was a trap, and I was caught, not just by the sight, but by what I'd done, what I'd become. The text echoed in my mind. "You're one of us now." And as I sat there, the hum growing louder, I realized the truth. They weren't going to let me go. Not until they were done with me. Not until I was fully theirs. The alley was dark, the kind of dark that swallows you whole, where the city's hum feels like a living thing pressing against your skin. I sat there, slumped against the cold brick wall, my breath ragged, my body trembling from exhaustion and fear. The hammer lay beside me, useless, a pathetic shield against something that wasn't physical, wasn't bound by the rules of the world I knew. The hum was louder now, not just in my head, but in the air, vibrating through the pavement, the walls, the night itself. It was the Red Room, reaching for me, reminding me that running was pointless. I'd tried to escape, but it had found me in that diner, on a TV I hadn't touched, with those words, "You can't run, guest." Session 4 begins now. I wanted to scream, to claw at the ground, to tear myself apart just to make it stop. But I was too tired, too broken. My backpack was open, the contents spilling out. Clothes, a water bottle, the granola bar I hadn't touched. I stared at them, these scraps of my old life, and felt nothing. The boy's screams, the woman's blood, the man's shattered shoulder. They were louder than anything real, drowning out the world. I'd chosen the hammer, the knife, the drill. I'd typed those words, and now the Red Room owned me. Its hooks sunk deep into my soul. I don't know how long I sat there, minutes or hours, time slipping away like blood down a drain. The hum never stopped, but it shifted, grew sharper, more insistent, like it was calling me. I looked around the alley, half expecting to see the masked figure standing at the end, their plastic face gleaming under a streetlight. But there was nothing, just trash, graffiti, the faint drip of water from a broken pipe. I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking, my hands clutching the hammer. I had to keep moving, had to find a way out, even if every step felt like walking deeper into a trap. I stumbled out of the alley, back into the city's glow. The streets quieter now, the late-night chill biting at my skin. I didn't know where to go, but I couldn't stay still. The Red Room was everywhere, on screens, in the hum, in my head. But I told myself if I kept moving, kept changing places, maybe I could slip through its grasp. I walked aimlessly, past shuttered shops and empty bus stops, my hood up, my eyes darting to every shadow. I avoided anything with a screen, no ATMs, no digital billboards, nothing that could light up with that black page, that cursed text. I ended up at a park, small and overgrown, the kind of place people avoid at night. The benches were empty, the swings creaking in the wind, the streetlights flickering like they were about to die. I sat on the grass, hidden behind a cluster of bushes, my back against a tree, the hammer in my lap. I tried to think, to plan, but my mind was a mess, fragments of screams and blood and masks swirling together. I needed to disappear, to become someone else, to cut every tie to the life I'd had. No devices, no internet, no name. But even as I thought it, I knew it wouldn't work. The Red Room had found my laptop, my phone, my tablet, devices I hadn't even used. It had turned them on, bypassed every barrier. It wasn't just tech. It was something else, something that saw me, that knew me. I closed my eyes just for a moment, hoping for a second of peace. But the hum was there, louder, sharper, like a blade scraping against my skull. My eyes snapped open and I saw it, a faint glow, coming from my backpack. My heart stopped. I hadn't packed anything electronic, hadn't touched anything that could connect to the internet. But the glow was unmistakable, pulsing through the fabric, calling me. I tore the bag open, my hands shaking, and found it. A cheap smartwatch, one I'd forgotten I owned, buried at the bottom. Its screen was lit, the Tor browser open, the black page staring back at me. Session 4 begins now. Choose the guest. I screamed, throwing the watch into the grass, but the screen didn't break, didn't dim. The concrete room flickered into view, the chair, the table, the tools, all gleaming under the harsh light. The figure in the mask was there, standing in the center, their head tilted, the black holes of their eyes locked on me. The chair was empty, but the restraints were wet, the floor slick with blood that hadn't dried. The text changed. Choose the guest, or we choose for you. The camera panned to the metal door, creaking open, and two masked figures dragged someone in. I couldn't see their face, just their body, small, frail, their hands bound, their struggles weak, like they'd already given up. I grabbed the hammer, ready to smash the watch to end it, but my hand froze. The text flashed again. Choose, or we choose you. My blood ran cold. Me? They couldn't mean that. I was a guest, a watcher, not one of them. But the words sank into me, heavy and final, and I realized what they'd been doing all along. Every choice, every tool, every scream, they'd been pulling me closer, making me one of them, preparing me for this. The figure in the mask raised a hand, pointing at the camera, at me, and the text changed. Last chance guest. I typed no one, my fingers trembling, the screen smudged with sweat. The text flashed red. Invalid. Choose a guest. The camera zoomed in on the person in the chair, their face still hidden, but their body was shaking, their muffled cries barely audible. The figure picked up a knife, its blade long and thin, and stepped closer. I typed stop over and over, my hands slipping, but the text kept rejecting it. Choose or we choose you. The figure raised the knife, hovering it over the person's chest, and I screamed, throwing the watch into the dirt, smashing it with the hammer until it was nothing but plastic and glass. The hum stopped. The park was silent, the wind still, the streetlight steady. I sat there panting, the hammer shaking in my hands, the pieces of the watch scattered around me. I'd done it. I'd broken it, severed the connection. But as I stared at the wreckage, I felt no relief. The air was heavy, the shadows too dark, and I could still feel them watching, waiting. I stood, my legs unsteady, and started running again, deeper into the park, away from the city, away from everything. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care, just needed to move, to keep ahead of the hum, the text, the mask. I found a hiding spot, a dense thicket of trees and bushes, and crawled inside, curling up in the dirt, my backpack clutched to my chest. I stayed there, my breath shallow, my heart pounding, listening for the hum, for any sign they'd found me. Hours passed, maybe more, the night stretching on forever. I told myself I'd done it, I'd escaped, I'd broken free. But deep down, I knew it wasn't true. The Red Room wasn't a place you could run from. It was a trap, and I was still caught, still theirs, still marked by the choices I'd made. As dawn broke, the sky turning gray, I felt it, a faint vibration, not in the air, but in my pocket. My hands shook as I reached inside, pulling out a small device I didn't recognize, a tiny screen, no bigger than a credit card, glowing faintly. I hadn't packed it, hadn't seen it before, but there it was, the black page loading, the text waiting. "You can't escape, guest. Session 5 is next." I dropped it, my scream silent, my body collapsing into the dirt. They'd found me. They'd always find me. And as the hum returned, louder than ever, I knew I wasn't running anymore. I was theirs, and there was no way out. The tiny screen lay in the dirt, its glow cutting through the pre-dawn gray. The words, "You can't escape, guest. Session 5 is next," pulsing like a heartbeat. I stared at it, my body numb, my mind a fractured mess of fear and guilt. The hum was everywhere now, not just in the device, but in the trees, the air, my bones. It wasn't a sound anymore. It was a presence, a force, the Red Room itself wrapping around me, tightening like a noose. I'd run, I'd smashed every device, I'd hidden in the deepest corners of the city, but it didn't matter. They always found me. The Red Room wasn't a place. It was a curse, and I was its prisoner. I wanted to crush the device, to grind it into the earth with my heel, but my hands wouldn't move. The hammer was gone, lost somewhere in my frantic escape through the park, and without it, I felt defenseless, exposed. The screen flickered, and the concrete room appeared. The chair, the table, the tools, all bathed in that harsh, unforgiving light. The figure in the mask stood in the center, their head tilted, the plastic face gleaming, the black holes of their eyes fixed on me. The chair was empty, the restraints dripping with blood, the floor slick and shining. The text changed. "Session 5 begins now. Choose the guest, or we choose you." My breath stopped. The words weren't a threat anymore. They were a promise. I'd tried to run, tried to break free, but every step, every smashed device, had only pulled me deeper. The boy's screams, the woman's blood, the man's shattered shoulder. They were part of me now, carved into my soul by the choices I'd made. I wasn't just a guest. I was one of them. And this was the final test, the moment they'd been preparing me for. The camera panned to the metal door, creaking open, and two masked figures dragged someone in. Their face was hidden, their body small, trembling, their hands bound. I couldn't see who it was, but I knew what was coming. I knew what they wanted. I grabbed the device, my hands shaking, and typed, "No one," my fingers slipping on the tiny screen. The text flashed red. "Invalid. Choose a guest." The figure in the mask stepped toward the table, their hand hovering over the tools, a scalpel, a blowtorch, a pair of shears. The person in the chair was struggling, their muffled cries sharp and desperate, and the camera zoomed in, revealing their face. It was me, my face, my eyes, wide with terror, my mouth gagged, my body strapped to the chair. I screamed, dropping the device, but the image stayed, burned into my vision. It couldn't be real. I was here, in the park, in the dirt, not there, not in that room. But the hum was deafening now, drowning out everything, and the screen kept glowing, the text relentless. Choose the tool, or we choose for you. I clawed at the dirt, my hands tearing at roots and rocks, trying to bury the device, to silence it, but it wouldn't stop. The figure in the mask picked up the shears, their blades glinting, and stepped toward the chair, toward me. I could feel it, not just see it, the cold metal against my skin, the straps cutting into my wrists, the panic choking my throat. I screamed again, my voice raw, but it was swallowed by the hum, by the red room's grip. I typed "stop" over and over, my hands shaking, my vision blurring with tears, but the text rejected it. Choose, or it's you. I didn't want to choose. I didn't want to be part of this. But the figure was closer now, the shears open, the blades hovering over my strapped-down hand. I could feel the cold, the sharp edge, even though I was still in the park, still in the dirt. It wasn't just a screen anymore. It was real, and I was there, in both places at once, trapped in the red room's twisted logic. I typed "scalpel," my hands moving before my brain could stop them, praying it would be quick, less brutal. The figure paused, set the shears down, and picked up the scalpel, its blade thin and precise. They dragged it across my arm in the chair, slow and deliberate, the pain searing through me, real and impossible, blood welling up, dripping onto the floor. I screamed, clutching my arm, but there was no wound, no blood, just my skin, pale and unbroken. The screen showed it, though. My arm, sliced open, the flesh parted, the muscle exposed. The figure stepped back, and the text appeared. Good choice, guest. Again. The pain lingered, phantom but real, burning through me as I watched myself in the chair, my face contorted, my eyes pleading with the camera, with myself. The bids started, the audience taking over, teeth, eyes, chest, the numbers climbing, the figure following each one, the scalpel moving, the blowtorch hissing, my screams echoing through the park, through the room, through my skull. I don't know how I did it, but I forced myself to move. I grabbed the device, my hands slick with sweat, and ran, stumbling through the park, the screen still glowing, the feed still playing. I threw it into a pond, watching it sink, the light fading under the water. But the hum didn't stop. It was in me, part of me. And as I ran, I felt the red room following, its presence in every shadow, every flicker of light. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care, just needed to keep moving, to outrun the pain, the guilt, the truth. I ended up in an abandoned lot, overgrown with weeds, the city distant and quiet. I collapsed, my body giving out, my mind splintering. The hum was softer now, but it was still there, a reminder that I hadn't escaped. I never would. The red room had claimed me, not just as a guest, but as a victim, a participant, a piece of its machinery. I lay there, staring at the sky, the stars hidden by city lights, and realized there was only one way out. Not running, not hiding, but fighting. I had to stop it, not just for me, but for them. The woman, the man, the boy, all the faces I'd seen, all the screams I'd heard. I didn't have a plan, didn't know how, but I knew it started with me. I stood, my legs shaking, my hands empty but clenched. I'd go back, not to the red room, but to its source, to the dark web, to the forums, to the people who'd led me there. I'd find the link, the code, the ones who ran it. I'd expose them, destroy them, even if it cost me everything. The hum was still there, faint but persistent, but I ignored it, forcing myself to move, to walk back into the city, back into the fight. I don't know if I succeeded. I don't know if I'm still running, still fighting, or if I'm back in that chair, the scalpel hovering over me. The red room blurs the line between real and unreal, between guest and victim, and I'm not sure where I stand anymore. But I know one thing. I didn't choose to stop. I didn't choose to give up. And as I walked into the dawn, the hum fading but never gone, I swore I'd keep fighting, even if it meant becoming something else, something as dark as the room itself. Because the red room doesn't let you go. But maybe, just maybe, I could make it bleed. Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.